Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. Samsara Sindhu Mati Dustara Mutti Tirusho Nanya Plava Bhagavata Purushottamasya Leela Katha Rasa Nisevanamantarena Pumsam Bhaved Vivida Dukkha Davarthitasya. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Save Earth Now campaign has been described. Samsara Sindhum Ati Dustaram Utti Tirusho. It has been described that this material existence is an ocean which is insurmountable. It's impossible to cross over. And there's no other boat. There's only one boat. And the boat is Na Anya Plava Bhagavataha Purushottamasya Leela Katha Rasanisevanam Antarena. This is the 40th verse of the 4th chapter of the 12th canto, which describes that the only boat that exists, or we could share, ideally there are ships that are used to cross over the ocean, but this is a boat because there's limited space. Only few people want to cross over. Not many want to cross over this ocean of material existence. So the only boat that exists, which can take us across the ocean of suffering, is Bhagavataha Purushottamasya Leela Katha Rasanisevanam. It is the relishment of the beautiful, wonderful, sweet pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore, Pumsam Bhaved Vivida Dukkha Davarthitasya. Living entities who are being burnt by the forest fire of distress in this ocean of material existence. There's only one way. That is to study Srimad Bhagavatam, practice Srimad Bhagavatam, and share Srimad Bhagavatam with the world. Because this is the boat that takes us across. In the Padma Puran, the same thing has been explained in a different verse. Tamadi Devam Karuna Nidhanam Tamala Varanam Suhitavataram Apar Samsara Samudra Setum Bhajamahe Bhagavata Swarupam. In this verse from the Padma Puran, it describes that this ocean of material existence has only one bridge that we can take to cross over. And the name of that bridge is Bhagavata Swarupam, Srimad Bhagavatam. So as we see in the present generation that we live in, it's getting impossible materially to live in, with pandemics, with epidemics, health concerns, psychophysical problems, depression, loneliness. We are suffering on the physical plane. We are suffering on the mental platform. We are suffering in relationships. We are suffering with our egos being smashed in the spheres of life, whether at work, whether at home. We are suffering financially. Amidst all of this, there's only one hope: to fill our hearts, the pots of our hearts, with the nectar of joy, that is to study and share the pastimes of Krishna, which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. We see that even Vyasadeva himself found so much solace after composing and compiling Srimad Bhagavatam. We see the attachment that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself had in the studying of Srimad Bhagavatam. He would sit with Gadadhar Pandit Goswami at the Tota Gopinath temple in Jagannath Puri and study Srimad Bhagavatam, not once, not twice, but 108 times. Just the pastime of Dhruva, just the pastime of Prahlad. In fact, in the Puranas, it is described Sada Sevya Srimad Bhagavati Katha Yasya Shravana Matrena Hari Chittam Samashrayit. That Sri Krishna, whose lotus feet we had to take shelter of, that same Krishna takes shelter of the heart of the living entity, if the living entity studies and shares the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam with the world. This is the benediction given for those who practice and share this culture of Srimad Bhagavatam. Not just Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. We find in the generations to follow, we see Srila Rupa Goswami writing commentaries in the form of the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Srila Sanatan Goswami writing commentaries in the form of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the expansions of the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, not just writing commentaries to the Srimad Bhagavatam, but also writing a supplementary copy to the Bhagavatam as the Bhagavata Amrita Kana, a small droplet in the ocean of the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. What to speak of the life of Srinivas Acharya, who taught us how rare it is to get the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srinivas Acharya personally walked all the way to have darshan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He went all the way to have the personal audience of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And unfortunately, he fell flat on his knees, jaws dropping in not amazement, but in shock and grief when he got to know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had wound up his pastimes. He was crying and weeping to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in his heart and directed him towards Gadadhar Pandit. Said, you go to Gadadhar Pandit and he will teach you Srimad Bhagavatam. Srinivas Acharya walks all the way to Gadadhar Pandit, who's crying and weeping. Torrents of rain showers in the form of tears from the clouds of his eyes. The bursts of ecstatic separation and lamentation, feeling the pain of separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit said, yes, I would be very happy to teach you Srimad Bhagavatam, but there's a big problem. I have only one copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that copy has been drenched by the ever-flowing tears in separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. My tears have drenched the paper and smudged the ink, and now I can't read the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam myself. So if you can arrange another copy of Srimad Bhagavatam, I will teach you. Now here is Srinivas Acharya writing to Narahari Sarkar, his instructing spiritual master, Shiksha Guru, to arrange for a copy to help him. And then he goes all the way to collect that copy. And by the time he returns with the copy, he understands that Gadadhar Pandit has also wound up his pastimes in separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srinivas Acharya has one copy of Srimad Bhagavatam and no teacher to teach him. Again, he is crying and weeping. And Gadadhar Pandit appears in his heart and tells him, go to Rupa and Sanatan in Vrindavan. Srinivas Acharya walks all the way from Jagannath Puri to Vrindavan, only to get to this news that Rupa and Sanatan have left this world in separation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srinivas Acharya can't believe this. He's crying, looking at the sky. I think I am the most unfortunate person. I can't see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I can't get a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. And when I get a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam, I have no teacher to teach me. The Acharyas preferred to leave this world than to sit and teach me. And Rupa and Sanatan appear amidst his very sincere eagerness to study Srimad Bhagavatam. They appear in his heart and they direct him towards Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Jiva Goswami. Here is Srinivas Acharya at the lotus feet of Radha Govinda Dev in Vrindavan, getting the personal audience of Jiva Goswami, who takes him to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Gopal Bhatta Goswami initiates him and instructs him to study Srimad Bhagavatam from Jiva Goswami. Dear devotees, one copy of Srimad Bhagavatam and one teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam is that rare a commodity and fortune in this material world. Srinivas Acharya personally went through all this trouble only to teach us from his personal example. Look at Bhaktivedanta Thakur. To get one copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita in Bengali, he struggled. He couldn't find it so easily. But look at our great fortune. Coming down the generation as the followers of Srila Prabhupada under the auspices of ISKCON, we have Srimad Bhagavatam on our book racks, on our bookshelves. But unfortunately, Srimad Bhagavatam is crying for two reasons. One, because we have kept Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. Prabhupada said, yes, Bhagavad Gita as it is, but we have kept even Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. We kept him as it is on the book rack, in the bookshelf. Srimad Bhagavatam is crying for two reasons. One, pick me up and study and drown in devotional love. And second, as Sripad Vaisheshika Prabhu explains, distribute the overflow. Fill your heart with devotion and share this nectar with the world. Srimad Bhagavatam needs all of us. The earth needs all of us. In fact, in the followers of Srila Prabhupada, today is the holy appearance day of Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj would have a headache if he didn't have an opportunity to share Srimad Bhagavatam on a specific day. If there's no Bhagavatam class, if there's no way he can share Srimad Bhagavatam with the world, he would have a headache. And the way to cure his headache was not pills, but just a Srimad Bhagavatam class. And when he would speak Srimad Bhagavatam for 3-4 hours, he would feel so much joy. Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, waking up at 2:30 in the morning, studying Srimad Bhagavatam and sharing that, even before Mangalarati. And what to speak of the examples that Param Pujyapad Srila Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and Sripad Vaisheshika Prabhu have shown this world of studying Srimad Bhagavatam, teaching Srimad Bhagavatam, distributing Srimad Bhagavatam, and living lives based on Srimad Bhagavatam for all of us to see as an example. In fact, in the Shastra, it is described the fortune that we all have. What does one gain by distributing Srimad Bhagavatam? It is described that Hema Simhayutam Chaitat Vaishnavaya Dadati Cha Krishnena Sahasayujyam Sapuman Labhate Dhruvam. That if someone distributes the physical copy of Srimad Bhagavatam through book distribution, it is a guarantee. Krishna gives a guarantee at the time of death, I will come. Pritya tasyaiva vaikuntham govindopi prayachati. Krishna gives a guarantee that I will take you back home, back to Godhead, only if you engage in this book distribution campaign. So therefore, dear devotees, it is of paramount importance for all of us to save earth now, as Sripad Vaisheshika Prabhu was explaining, because the Shastra describes Tavat samsara chakresmin bhramate ajnanatah puman yavat karna gata nasti shukha shastra kathakshanam. That till the time one doesn't absorb one's consciousness in the words of Srimad Bhagavatam, till that extent, till that point, one is guaranteed to transmigrate in this material world. This is the translation to the verse that we just uttered. So therefore, by giving this fortune to one and all, by personally practicing it, by teaching it, and by sharing these books with the world, we give everyone the opportunity to drown in the pastimes of Vrindavan Dham. In fact, Mula Prakriti Devi very beautifully explains how happy Srila Prabhupada used to get by just hearing the book distribution scores. One time in Hawaii, as she was returning after book distribution at the airport, Prabhupada's servant was Upendra Prabhu at that time. So Prabhupada asked Upendra Prabhu, is she coming from preaching? And Upendra Prabhu said, yes, she's coming from book distribution. Prabhupada said, call her in right now. And she explains that her hair was disabled and she was all day at the airport. And Upendra Prabhu runs down to tell her, Prabhupada wants to see you. He wants to know how your day of book distribution was. He wants to talk to you. And she goes in and Prabhupada calls her closer. Sit, just like a grandfather would speak to a granddaughter, right? Come close, sit and tell me how your day was. What did you do? And she said, well, Prabhupada, I was distributing your books. And Prabhupada got more excited. He said, please tell me, how many books? Did you get some Srimad Bhagavatam? And she said, yes, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, what kind of audience? She said, teachers, students, housewives, professors, military men. Prabhupada said, more. And what background? And she said, well, there were people who were Americans. I saw some Indians as well. And there were some Europeans. Prabhupada said, more? Children? Students? And she said, yes. Prabhupada said, what was the conversation like? What were you telling them? And she would say, well, I was reading out from sections of Srimad Bhagavatam by saying, this is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. By studying Srimad Bhagavatam, your life will become perfect and you'll become happy. Prabhupada said, yes, this is the way Srimad Bhagavatam sells himself. Prabhupada picked up the verse, Krishniswadhamopagate dharma jnanadi bhisahar kalau nashtadrishametas puranarka dunoditaha. This is the 43rd verse of the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto. And Srila Prabhupada said, this is the verse which describes that when Krishna left the planet, Krishna reincarnated in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because when Krishna left, all religiosity, all piety left with him and made this world very dark in ignorance. But the sun of Srimad Bhagavatam has risen to give light to one and all. And Srila Prabhupada said, look how Srimad Bhagavatam is selling himself. And Prabhupada said, I myself gained so much inspiration by studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So you should continue like this and know for sure it pleases me the most. In fact, Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj explains, whenever Prabhupada would arrive in any center, any temple, the first question at the airport used to be, how's the book distribution like? Amidst all the projects that Prabhupada was into, Prabhupada said, distributing my books pleases me like no other service. If you really want to please me, distribute my books. So we please Srila Prabhupada, and following the footsteps of Narottam, Shyamananda, and Srinivas, the first ever book distribution campaign, The first ever Save Earth campaign in our parampara. We are following their footsteps. Because Srinivas Acharya, after he learnt and studied the Srimad Bhagavatam from Jiva Goswami, he personally, with Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda Prabhu, went on book distribution. And it is described how wonderfully they collected all the books of the Goswamis. Even the works of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was stacked up on a bullock cart. And by the will of good fortune, Krishna's divine intervention, they went off to sleep that night because they were so tired speaking and distributing these books. They went off to sleep that night under a wish-fulfilling tree. And when they woke up, all the books were gone. And they were shocked because they had no clue where the books disappeared. And lo and behold, they went on in different directions to search for these books. And Srinivas Acharya, directed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the heart, happened to enter a kingdom where there was narration of Srimad Bhagavatam, the kingdom of Maharaj Veer. And there's ecstatic discussion of the Rasa Leela from the 10th canto. And Srinivas Acharya is listening to the narration, but he's not quite satisfied with the purport that's given as the interpretation to the pastime, because he's learnt it firsthand from Jiva Goswami, the greatest scholar and authority on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srinivas Acharya gets up in the middle of that assembly and he tells the king, well, that's not the interpretation. That's not authorized. And the authentic meaning of this verse is as follows. And as Srinivas Acharya goes on to explain, the whole courtroom is spellbound in amazement. And the king invites Srinivas Acharya to an embrace. And he explains to him that, oh, you have blessed me with your presence. Please tell me what brings you here. And Srinivas Acharya tells the king, well, I came on a book distribution campaign, but unfortunately I've lost all my books. I don't know who has stolen it. And the king reveals, he explained that actually I'm a king during the day, but I have a bad habit that I like to steal at night. It's a mysterious story, a very mysterious story. So yeah, I have an astrologer who predicts on which street the most richest person is walking. And then the richest person that was predicted by the astrologer was Srinivas Acharya, because he was richest, because he had the wealth of the books. So the king ordered his men to go and plunder this wealth and get all the treasure. And the treasure was Srimad Bhagavatam. So the king said, the books that you're searching for is actually there in my book room. I thought I was stealing the greatest wealth in the form of gold and diamonds and rubies and emeralds, but I found something way higher, the most precious jewel of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's all right here. So Srinivas Acharya is so happy to see the treasure that he had lost to get it back. Srinivas Acharya becomes so pleased. The king falls flat on his knees at the lotus feet of Srinivas Acharya and begs him for forgiveness, begs him with apologies and forgiveness. He says, please forgive me. I stole all of this, but I want to return it back to you. As atonement, I want to take shelter of your lotus feet, not just me, but the whole kingdom. Srinivas Acharya initiates everyone and gives them the instruction to physically handwrite and hand copy the Srimad Bhagavatam and help him in the book distribution campaign of saving Mother Earth. So Maharaj Veer was inspired by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take all those books away, only so that later he can give it back and take shelter of Srinivas Acharya and help in the book distribution marathon. So they all get initiated and physically hand copy, and they distribute this nectar. And that's how Srimad Bhagavatam comes down generations by the blessings of Narottam, Shyamananda, and Srinivas, the book distribution triad, we could say, of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Last but not the least, how can we repay Srila Prabhupada for what he has given us? My Guru Maharaj explains that English language is like the flowing river in a village. You see, in a village, you have a flowing river and you can do everything with it. You can drink water from it. You can wash your clothes at a certain place. You can even bathe. You can even take your animals there to drink water. It's like a community place. And the flowing river helps everyone in the village. So my spiritual master explains that English language is like the flowing river. It has poetry, it has drama, it has literature. It's for everyone in the world. But what is Srimad Bhagavatam? Srimad Bhagavatam is like Charanamrit. It's like the nectar from the lotus feet of the Lord. And what did Prabhupada do? He mixed Charanamrit into the flowing river of the village. Now everyone in the village gets Charanamrit. So by giving Srimad Bhagavatam in a language that the whole world can read, that's the English language, Prabhupada has given the whole world this great fortune of studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Because how many of us can actually reach the commentaries of the Sanskrit language and understand the purport? It's impossible. But Srila Prabhupada, just like baby food, the mother crushes everything, and in a way that the child can digest. Srila Prabhupada has taken all the commentaries, plus added his personal transcendental ecstatic purports, and given it in the language of the world, the English language that we all discuss, that we all speak, and all communications takes place in this world. So by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, under the auspices of Srila Prabhupada, we can tap into the nectar of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's compassion, mixed with Srila Prabhupada's unlimited magnanimous heart. So it's our greatest fortune. As Sripad Vaisheshika Prabhu was explaining, we are right now in the Sankirtan movement. It is not in the past and it's not in the future. We are right now in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes of studying Srimad Bhagavatam, living by those principles, and sharing it with the world. And last but just as a small update, my book distribution score in the last 2 weeks has been 25 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. So just wanted to add that for the pleasure and the smile of Sripad Vaisheshika Prabhu. With that, I would like to offer my obeisances to one and all present here. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo.